One of the things about Lethbridge is that it just has this crazily rich visual art community.
The programming here is amazing. It's rigorous, it's interesting.
There's always something unique to see here.
So today we're here with Arianna Richardson, a practicing visual artist. She's got ties to the Lethbridge area. She got her BFA from the University of Lethbridge in 2013, and more recently in 2018, she graduated from NASCAD with an MFA in Halifax. So Arianna, you're someone that's spent a great deal of time doing visual arts. You know, the terms craft and hobby and fine arts are sometimes pretty distinctive categories. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that label that you've chosen to be known as the hobbyist.
I adopted the kind of moniker the hobbyist in 2010. Initially it was just to kind of meld my domestic life with my kind of professional fine arts life. And it's since morphed for me into a way to kind of talk about labor and value and what kind of labor is valued, you know, what is considered professional material to be working with, or a serious material, or, you know, how else can I explain it? You know, a hobby is typically someone who's not serious. Fine art is serious. So I'm kind of, you know, trying to say just because you're using a certain process or material, you can still be in fine art. Yeah.
Has there been any blowback challenging these categories of, you know, the fine arts discipline and craft and things like that?
Not blowback, but more maybe just confusion about why I would be calling myself a hobbyist when I'm like, I've done like a professional degree in art. So there's a bit of a conflict there, but to me it's more about the material and process that I use, and just trying to say that a distinction between being, you know, doing craft for hobby or craft for art is kind of really arbitrary and kind of becomes a class-based discussion where it's like whose labor is, you know, made hobby. Usually like a female working at home, which, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so it's kind of like that, trying to challenge that.
Right on. So taking this idea a little bit further, your Instagram handle is Hobbyist Brand. You've also worked on things like garbage can cozy installations, called Hobbyist Brand product number 11, number 12. You even did an 8-foot by 8-foot tinsel work called Hobbyist Shop. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the relationship of fine arts and commerce, you know, these other disciplines of like marketing, typography, and just those commercial arts?
I'm really obsessed with kind of consumer culture and just how our whole society basically revolves around buying things and throwing them away. And so for me, trying to make my work into products, saleable products, is a bit kind of like poking fun at, I guess, art being products, but we call it art, so it's not like, you know, product would be like a dirty word in a way. And also I like to kind of insert myself into consumer culture to try and maybe understand it, or just try and understand some of the processes of how products are made. And I've noticed, like, in terms of material, and we'll get to that a little further down, but there's, I mean, tinsel has been one thing that's been reoccurring, but you know, there's quite a diverse exploration of materials and stuff like that in your work, which is pretty interesting. So where are you drawing inspiration from these days? Right now I'm really into crafts and other people's crafts that have been, you know, donated to the thrift store or are for sale at a garage sale. That's just kind of that sort of labor that's totally devalued. You know, you can buy a hand crocheted pillow that someone made 20 years ago or 40 years ago and nobody wants it, so it's $1. And so, you know, the aesthetic of these things I'm really into, but I'm also into like the process of them being made and kind of how they go from a lovingly crafted object to basically worthless. And also I draw a lot of inspiration from like product catalogs, all kinds of different things like car dealership catalogs or parade float catalogs, shipping supplies. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just like flipping through that. I could be really generative.
Cool.
Thinking of ideas.
Tell me about some maybe visual artists whose work you admire.
There's a few. Alison Mitchell, she's from Ontario. She makes great work. Kind of craft, like using old craft materials like old Afghans or craft, repurposing craft. It's really feminist, kind of out there, really, she describes herself as a maximalist.
Okay.
So it's kind of also my whole jam, just like more, all the colors, all the textures, all the patterns.
Yeah.
Sculptural and installation work. And there's another artist from New York named Muriel Laderman-Euclides. And I got really into her work when I was doing my MFA. I discovered her work, and she is amazing. She does a lot of stuff with garbage or around garbage, like maintenance labor as well. It's kind of conceptual, but also performance-based installation. She's been the artist in residence at the New York Department of Sanitation for like 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And has done, made a mirrored garbage collecting truck and like really crazy, beautiful, and interesting, like thought-provoking work. Yeah. And Colette Urban, I think she was from Ontario, but was a Newfoundland-based artist, and she did a lot of like stuff around collecting and some performances. So those are kind of my 3 favorites at the moment.
Right on. Cool. What type of environment or surroundings do you need to be creative?
I need to be surrounded by millions of hordes of things. Like I just like to collect lots of different things, and I need to have them around me. Kind of like an overwhelming kind of sensation place.
So you spent a few years in Halifax for school. Tell me how that informed your work.
It was interesting to just kind of go basically as far away as I could within Canada to just try a new place and go to a new school and meet new people. And it was great. I don't know, that's where I became really obsessed with garbage because it's just a different situation how they deal with their trash there, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
Because here, we all have alleys and we like, put it in the bin and it's gone, but there's no alleys in Halifax, so you just put your garbage bag on the boulevard and there's garbage everywhere.
Interesting.
And it's different.
What has Lethbridge had to offer in terms of your artistic practice?
The thrift stores in Lethbridge are incredible. Better than in Nova Scotia where I was. I don't know what that is. I think there's just maybe a higher level of affluence here. People abandon their craft products more readily, whereas out there, they're like, people craft more generally. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. But I think Lethbridge is a really great community to be an artist because people are so supportive. And I think that has to do with kind of the size of our city. We have a strong art community, and there isn't as much competition as in a big city where everyone's trying to like be the top dog, and there's only so many resources, whereas here we're all excited to see art, so fostering it more.
So as a visual artist, you're often kind of looking to the next project or next thing, and it's hard to sort of pin down and sort of stick with one maybe design or color palette or things like that. Tastes are constantly changing. I watched a video recently where you talked about the tattoos that you've got. I was particularly interested about the tattoos on your right bicep. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, I have Armut 1917, Marcel Duchamp's urinal signature, which I love that work, and it's recently kind of come to light to me that he kind of stole that idea and that from someone else, from a woman at the time, so I don't know her name, which is a shame, but I love that work. I love kind of the story of it, and I thought it would be funny to just kind of get it in my armpit, kind of like a joke. I don't know. And the other one is just my old car, and I really loved it. I love objects, I love things, I think there's something magical about them, and the car was special to me. And now it's there forever.
You ever dig through the traders or Kijiji looking for that same model, the Ford, what was it, 86 or something?
86 Ford Escort.
Yeah, right on.
I wish it still worked. I would have worked on it now and tried to fix it.
Yeah.
Not being how I am now, but
Right.
back then I just couldn't fix it. So.
Arianna, in looking at your work, you seem very deliberate about how things are received or perceived by the viewer. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the work that you've done outside of the traditional gallery setting with your performance work and your installation sculptures.
Mm-hmm. I do consider my work performance work when I'm outside. It's like a really loosely applied term, though. I'm not really like performing. I don't have a script. I'm just kind of out in space with people, and I don't know of a better term for it than that. But I like to be outside of the gallery space so I can kind of talk to people more, because I think that when not that many people even go into a gallery space in the first place, and then when they do, they kind of have certain expectations of what they're going to encounter. And I've found that being outside, like literally just outside downtown, you encounter people and have these really interesting off-the-cuff conversations with them, because they don't have an expectation of what they're gonna see. They just see something really weird, like a big garbage can outside, and me in a gold suit, like picking up garbage and interviewing people.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is going on over there? And so, people will come over and have these really great conversations.
Right.
And as I started to kind of make work mostly around waste and consumerism and kind of the climate crisis, I thought I want to talk to people. And I think art is a great way to kind of spread ideas. It's like, well, how am I going to spread ideas? Who do I want to talk to?
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk to everyday people. I don't want to talk to the same kind of echo chamber of art crew, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I have a fly
He
attacking me.
likes you.
I appreciate those conversations, and I think it's important to have them, but I also think it's important to kind of make art available to more people and in unexpected ways.
So just over 2 years ago, you submitted your master's thesis, and it was entitled, I have to read this because I won't get it right, but New Materialisms, Intersections of Plastic, Consumption, and Spectacle. And like all good MFA theses, you had a section in there on tinsel, and I'd like to read some of that. Quote, "This material has been a near constant in my work since 2009. I've been buying out entire stocks from stores, excitedly collecting vintage examples from thrift stores and garage sales, and have amassed a huge collection of various iterations of the stuff." Arianna, this relationship with tinsel sounds pretty serious. Why don't you tell me more about it?
It is. It's something it just kind of happened naturally for me. I have like a reaction to it. It's like a sensorial explosion to me, tinsel, and I think it's really exciting. But beyond that, I've kind of thought critically about like why do I like it? Why am I so attracted to it? Mm-hmm. Why do I always want to make everything shiny? And it's kind of, tinsel's interesting because it ticks a lot of different boxes, like the mass-produced, it's synthetic, it is decorative, it's like the most succinct example of overt decoration for decoration's sake. It's kind of frivolous, it's universally kind of attractive to people, and so when I use it in my work, I find a lot of my comments that people give me are like, oh, it's so shiny, like I love it, it's so shiny, or people will come over to me and be like, oh, I saw you from over there and wondered what that was about. So it's attractive to people, I guess. I don't know. I'm obsessed with it though, just the feel of it.
Right.
I don't know.
The therapeutic qualities of it, as you've addressed in your work. Right?
Mm-hmm. I think there's something to be said for just like dazzling. It does something to our brains.
Yeah.
And when I was writing my thesis, I came across this psychological kind of study that people had done. There was 2 of them. And they were wondering about shiny surfaces and reflective surfaces and like, who's attracted to them? Why do they think we're attracted to them? And they found like it was pretty universal across all ages and genders and whatever their study was. It was out of the States. And they hypothesized that it's because we're programmed to kind of seek out fresh water, which I think is really interesting. Like the scintillations of, rippling waves and, sparkling snow and So then I'm like, wow, isn't that amazing that we've created this totally synthetic material that's useless and absurd? Like, it's not, it's a waste of resources in a lot of ways to make something like this. But, it attracts us in this way that makes us think of water, but it's kind of the antithesis of water.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, as much as I came to it just because I love it, it's become really a lot, broader for me.
Right on.
I guess.
Interesting stuff. So, Arianna, if you're a practicing artist for any amount of time, eventually you need to write or talk about your work and provide some context. So, think, an artist statement, maybe a grant proposal, an MFA thesis. And at times, your audience changes, and sometimes, there's a tendency to maybe conceal what the work is about and allow the viewer to sort of interpret and bring their own meaning. And also times when you might want to spell that out and be a little more specific about what you were thinking about when you produced the work. So maybe tell me a little bit about that relationship between the artist and the audience, with those ideas in mind.
I think that my work can exist like really superficially for people, which I'm totally fine with, like just the visual of it, the aesthetic. It's like people like it, some people like it or whatever, like that's fine. There's also lots of usually layered meaning just based on like the material or the process, or sometimes the words or phrases I use, they're usually like just vacuous kind of consumer adjacent sayings. Like experience the magic. It's like, what are you even talking about? It's like, what magic? What do you, how? But I like to kind of, I hope anyway, that my work is open enough that people can appreciate it on whatever level they're at. Like, just the shininess of it, that's fine. Or if they want to talk about, the climate catastrophe kind of meanings that are in some of my work, or like overuse, overwaste, that kind of thing.
Arianna, a lot of the work that you've done sort of centers around these notions of consumerism and consumption, waste, things like that. You've even done some stuff with colonialism and things of that nature. So sometimes these are harder topics, and how has, incorporating humor into your work sort of helped open up a discussion about things like this?
I like to use humor in my work because I think it makes it more approachable, because a lot of the stuff I'm thinking about or trying to kind of convey to people is really pretty heavy, whether it's like, environmental destruction, the huge amounts of garbage that we make, colonization and kind of the trinkets that surround that, and make it seem like it's, that Canada's like this funny place. It's like, well, it can be heavy for people, and I think that making it funny or sparkly, it can kind of like get them engaged initially, and then they realize, oh, this is about something I don't want to talk about, but I'm already here, so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about consumerism and kind of the rate at which we buy things and throw them away, it's so absurd and it makes no sense. And so for me, I like to just kind of like dive right into that and be like, well, how absurd can I be? How, how superficial can I make this? And,
Arianna, tell us where we can find more of your work.
You can look on my website, which is www.ariannarichardson.ca, or on Instagram, but that's not usually my art. That's usually just whatever is happening in my life.